No one had slept in our guest room in years. We kept the door shut, and every single morning I'd open it to find the bed rumpled, the pillow dented, the covers thrown back, and the sheets, when I touched them, still warm. Someone was sleeping in the bed we never used, every night, and leaving it warm for me to find. Welcome back. It's just you and me and the dark tonight. 3 true stories about the guest room, that spare bedroom most of us have, the one that sits empty and closed and waiting. Waiting, we tell ourselves, for guests. But some guest rooms aren't as empty as we think, and some guests were never invited. Let's begin. We had a guest room that we almost never used. A spare bedroom at the end of the hall, made up nice, kept for visitors who came maybe twice a year. The rest of the time, the door stayed shut and the bed stayed made, crisp and untouched, the way a guest bed is. That's the whole point of a guest room. It waits empty and perfect for someone to need it. The first morning I found it disturbed, I assumed my husband had napped there or one of the kids had been playing. I opened the door to grab something from the closet, and the bed was rumpled, covers thrown back, pillow dented, sheets wrinkled like someone had slept in it and gotten up. I asked around. No one had been in there. I made the bed, shut the door, and forgot about it. The next morning it was rumpled again, and the morning after. Every day I'd open that guest room to find the bed slept in, covers pulled back on the same side, pillow dented in the same spot, the impression of a body in the mattress, as if someone had lain there all night and risen just before I opened the door, and it was warm. That was the part that stopped my heart the first time I felt it. I put my hand on the sheets to strip the bed, and they were warm, body warm, the warmth of someone who had been lying there minutes ago in a room no one had entered, in a bed no one had slept in for years. I set up every kind of check I could think of. I put a chair against the door. I laid a thread across the threshold. I locked the window. And every morning the thread was broken, or the chair was moved, or nothing was disturbed at all except the bed. Always slept in, always warm, always that same dented pillow and thrown back cover on the same side. My husband finally sat in the hall one whole night, watching that door to prove nothing came or went, and nothing did. He never saw the door open. He heard nothing. And in the morning, with him sitting right there having watched all night, the bed inside was slept in and warm. We tried, for a while, to just live with it. To share the house with the guest, the way you might make an uneasy peace with a draft or a creak in the stairs. I'd make the bed each morning, the guest would unmake it each night. It became a strange, silent routine between us, me erasing the evidence, the guest leaving it again. The two of us taking turns with a room, never once meeting, and I might have gone on like that indefinitely if I hadn't started to notice the small ways the arrangement was changing. The dent in the pillow crept over the weeks from the far side of the bed toward the near side, the side closest to the door, closest to the hall, closest to the rest of the house. The covers were thrown back a little farther each morning, as if the guest were rising a little more each night, a little readier to get up and come out. And the warmth in the sheets lasted longer, some mornings, fresher, closer to the moment I'd opened the door, as if the guest were cutting it finer and finer, lingering in the bed later and later, less and less concerned about being caught still in it. We started calling it between us in nervous jokes that stopped being jokes, the guest, because that's what it felt like. Not an intruder exactly, a guest, Someone who used the guest room for exactly what it was for, a place to sleep, and asked nothing else of us, and took nothing, and only left each morning the warm and rumpled evidence that they'd spent the night. Someone who had, in some sense, moved into the room we kept for guests, and who was simply, quietly using it. We moved in the end, not because the guest ever threatened us, it never did, but because of what my daughter said. She was little, and she asked me one morning over breakfast, completely calm, why the man who sleeps in the spare room never comes out to say hello. And I asked her carefully, what man? And she said, the man who sleeps in the guest room. She sees him sometimes, she said, when she gets up in the night. He's very still, and he sleeps on top of the covers in his clothes, and he told her not to worry, he's just a guest. He's been a guest here a very long time. And he asked her, she said, to please stop letting me make the bed, because he liked it, she said, the way he left it. And he didn't like me touching his sheets. That guest never asked for much beyond a made bed left unmade. The next family's guest asked for less and gave away more. A closet in the spare room that breathed out cold every single night onto whoever slept beside it. His guest room was ordinary in every way but one, the closet. It was a normal closet. Clothes rod, a shelf, a few stored coats. But every time he opened it, a wave of cold air rolled out. Not a draft. A deep, still, wrong cold, like opening a walk-in freezer that poured out of the closet and across the room and was gone in a few seconds, leaving the closet no colder than the rest of the house when he actually reached inside. Just that first exhale of cold, every single time the door opened. Like something behind the door had been holding its breath and let it out. Cold the instant the door cracked. He had the house checked for drafts, for cold spots, for anything mechanical. There was nothing, no vent behind the closet, no gap, no reason for a sealed interior closet to breathe out freezing air. But it did, reliably, every time. And over months, it changed. The exhale of cold got stronger, longer. It stopped fading after a few seconds and started lingering, filling the guest room so that the whole room grew cold and stayed cold. And he started to feel, standing in that room, that the cold was coming out to meet him. That opening the door was waking something, and it was breathing at him, and each time it breathed a little harder, reached a little farther. He mostly just kept the closet shut and the guest room unused and tried to forget it, until his sister came to stay and slept in the guest room and came down to breakfast gray and shaking and asked him quietly not to make her sleep in there again. Because in the night, she said, the closet door had opened on its own, slowly, and out of it had come the cold, but this time, with the cold, something else. She'd lain frozen in the guest bed and watched the closet door swing open in the dark and felt the cold roll over her, and in the cold, she'd heard breathing, slow, close, coming from the open closet. And then, she said, the cold had gotten into the bed with her, settled over her like a second blanket, heavy and freezing, and breathed against the back of her neck until the sky went gray and it withdrew back into the closet and the door drifted shut. After his sister's night in that room, he did some reading, the kind of frantic, 3 in the morning research you do when you can't tell anyone what's really happening. And he found that other people had described this exact thing. The closet that breathes cold, the freezing exhale, the sense of something holding its breath behind a door and letting it out when the door cracks. He found people who'd sealed such closets exactly like he had. And he found what several of them said happened next. And that was the thing that finally made him sell the house. They said the cold always finds another way. Seal the closet, and it comes through the vents. Seal the vents, and it comes up through the floor, because the closet was never really the source. The closet was just the door it happened to be using. The cold, the breathing, freezing, patient thing that made the cold, was in the house itself. And a thing that is in the house itself doesn't need a closet at all. It just needs you to keep sleeping in the room. He sealed that closet, screwed it shut, painted over the seam. And the cold, he told me, found the vents instead. It comes out of the guest room heating vent now some nights. A breath of deep, warm cold from a closet that no longer opens. Still breathing, just looking now for another way out. Sealing a door only moves the cold to a new one. The last story tonight is the one that parents tell me lands hardest, because it's about a child, a friend, and a guest room where no one was ever supposed to be. A couple had a young son, maybe 5, and a guest room that, again, went mostly unused, and their son started talking about his friend, a friend who lived in the guest room, a friend who only came out to play at night after Mom and Dad were asleep. The parents thought nothing of it at first. Imaginary friends are practically a rite of passage at that age. They'd smile and play along. "What's your friend's name? What does he look like?" And their son would tell them cheerfully about the man in the guest room who was his friend, who played with him at night, who knew lots of games. The man, not a boy, a man. And the more the son talked, the less it sounded like a child's imaginary playmate. He described the man's clothes, always the same. He described how the man was very tall and had to fold up small to fit in the guest room closet during the day, and only came out when it was dark and the parents were sleeping. He described the games they played, quiet games, hiding games. The man's favorite, where the son had to be very, very quiet and not tell Mom and Dad because it was a secret game, and the man said if he ever told, the game would be over, and the man would be sad. The night the mother finally understood, she'd gotten up to check on her son and found his bed empty. And she found him at 2 in the morning, sitting on the floor of the dark guest room, giggling softly, playing. Alone, she thought at first with relief. But her son looked up at her in the dark and put his finger to his lips and whispered, "Shh, it's not your turn. You'll scare him back into the closet." And she looked where her son was looking, at the closet, its door open a few inches onto black. And from inside that open closet in the dark, at a height far too tall for any child, she saw 2 eyes, low and gleaming, catch the hall light, watching her son, waiting for her to leave so the game could go on. She asked her son gently over the following days, safe, far away, everything she could bear to ask, trying to understand what had been in her home, playing with her child for however long. And the answers a 5-year-old gives are worse than any adult's because they are so matter-of-fact. The man was nice, her son insisted. The man never hurt him. The man just wanted someone to play with because he'd been alone in in the guest room for such a very long time, and everyone else who used to live in the house had gotten too big, or moved away, or stopped being able to see him. Her son was special, the man had said, because her son could still see him. Most people lose it when they grow up, and the man had been so happy to be seen again, so happy to have a friend, that he'd started to talk about how nice it would be if her son could just stay small forever and stay in the guest room with him and never have to grow up and move away and forget how to see like all the others had. And that was the sentence that had them packed and gone before the boy even woke the next morning. They were out of that house before dawn, and she told me the thing that haunts her still, because when they gently asked their son later, safe, how long his friend had lived in the guest room, he thought about it and shrugged and said, "Since before us, since before them." The man in the guest room had been there when they moved in, had been there, folded up in the closet by day, coming out by night through every family that had ever owned that house, and her son, her sweet 5-year-old, was simply the first one small enough and trusting enough to be told that he was a friend. That's all for tonight. If you've got a spare room in your house that sits empty and closed, maybe check it in the morning. And while you're up, subscribe and hit that bell, because there's a new true horror story here every single night, and you won't want to miss one. Give it a like so it finds the next person in the dark, and share it with someone who keeps a room for guests. I'll be right here tomorrow night when the lights go down. Sleep well, if you can.
Like, share, and subscribe for daily horror stories every single day.